Wicked. So, if you're both ready, I'll just launch straight into 302. Everyone will be like, why are they in the same clothes? That's weird. Should you have a quick wardrobe change just to confuse the fuck out of everybody?
I genuinely will. I'll turn my cap backwards.
Well, that's it, mate. Sponsors all love us. A 2-hour show. We can get in like hats, t-shirts, things, bits, stuff all over the place. That's it, exactly.
Coaster. Yeah.
I mean, sure. I don't know. I was going to say I don't know how long that will stay there. Instantly gone. Instantly off.
Well, I realized I had my headphones in. Otherwise, I would have actually grabbed like a jumper or something, and then I was like lazy. I don't have the energy to get up and make a joke.
That's fair. Cool. Right, I will launch us.
Am I a stand-up comedian?
Let's go then. Sort of, almost. I mean, you are. You've done it, so you actually are. Not even. Yeah. The tag is there now. It's on you forever.
It's in my permanent metadata.
Yes, exactly.
Lovely. I'm gonna sell it.
Sorry.
As an
Anyway.
NFT.
That's next week's topic.
Welcome,
Not a
friends.
fucking Tory. My favorite.
Who's a
NFTs.
Tory?
I just said NFT could stand for not fucking
Not fucking
Tory.
Tory. The only NFT,
The only NFT they
we
meant,
will
that's
abide.
good.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. You were gonna intro us.
Yes, that's all right. Welcome, friends, to Tanked Up, the podcast about video games. I'm Beer. I'm one of your hosts, Ben. It's episode 302, and I'm here with Lucy.
Hello, Beer Ben.
And Adel.
Hello, both of you.
Welcome, friends. It's our topic for the week. As we've split the shows up. Yes, the topic episode for the week. As we've split things up. Go on. What were you saying? Go on.
I was just gonna say we have our top episode and our top episode.
Ah, very good.
Although the one off the top was not the
Exactly.
Anyway,
Yes.
yeah.
Episode.
We've confused things already.
This feels like a episode already.
Yeah, new format, and it's already gone to shit. Of course it has. It's tanked up. It's always gonna happen. And we're going to be talking about a topic this evening. We're going to be talking about acquisitions, because of course everyone's talking about it. So why shouldn't we? But first, we've
been acquired.
That's it.
Cool.
Well, I mean,
6 billion
Is that all?
beans.
I mean that's still a lot of beans. I'd take it. You can resell beans. Wait,
mean-
are they dried, canned, or are
No.
they like fresh and gonna rot?
Jelly.
Wait, 6 billion jelly.
Beans.
Jelly
Jelly
One
beans. 6
Oh,
billion jelly beans.
No. I thought you were like instead of beans jelly, and I was like, well,
No.
how big is 1 unit of jelly? Is that like a 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter cube?
Surely
It's
one.
an Olympic
Yeah.
pool-sized vat of jelly.
Oh, mate. I just
You would
jump in and
die
just.
in that.
I mean, you would die, but you just jump in and.
I mean, the world would be just ruined by 6 billion jellies at that point. I mean,
Should we
you
open
say
some beers?
Yeah. While we open beers, I will just remind us that we actually were acquired by, because Tanked Up was originally its own thing before Out of Lives.
That's true.
Acquired us.
Yes, Out of Lives
So
did
what I'm
acquire us at
saying
one
is,
point, yes.
we're seasoned veterans to acquisitions. So everyone doesn't need to take a grain of salt because they've got our jelly or something.
What are you going to
drinking,
drink?
Ben?
All right, I'll kick off. I'm
We're
gonna
not
drink.
ready for this jelly, I tell you.
Oh no.
I get it close enough so the light doesn't kill it. I'm going to drink an Overtone. It's called Out of the Wild. It's an 8% double IPA. The condensation, because it's been sat here for an hour on it, you can't see that, but there's tons. It's almost slipping out of my hand. The flavor text, which is really difficult. Silver can, white text. That's really hard to read.
Who does that?
In this special dipper, we've used Neo Mexicanus hops, Sabro and Talus, which are bred from New Mexican wild hops. These distinctive hops impart creamy coconut and citrus rind flavors, along with stone fruit and the addition of Mosaic, Incognito, and Cryo. So Sabro, Talus, Mosaic Incognito, and Mosaic Cryo. What's Mosaic Incognito? Just a little offshoot of Mosaic?
It's when you hit Control-Shift-N because you want to have Mosaic and look at porn.
No, I'm buying gifts for someone. They can't see my history. It's fine.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, gift buying.
What are you going to drink, Adol? Is there any nefarious means to this beer?
No, I'm drinking another beer from Fernie because I really liked the last one from Fernie Brewing that I had last week. This is their Thunder Meadows IPA. It's 6.7% IPA. It's got Simcoe, Yakuanaut, and Idaho 7. Named after the legendary hut nestled deep in the Lizard Range, this piney, citrusy IPA seals the deal on a big, steep day in the backcountry. It has barley, wheat, and oats, so it's another wheaty oaty beer. And of course, I realize that this is probably trend in Alberta just because we produce a lot of wheat.
Right.
And like it's just not a thing you really see often in British beers is wheats.
Yeah.
I mean, this one's this overturn's got barley, oats, wheat,
Oh, does it
yeast,
wheat?
hops. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess maybe it's just the amount or the highlighting of it as a primary malt.
Yeah, I mean, but again, on the UK cans, they're being shown as allergens, right? Rather than kind of these are the ingredients in the beer. It's more like these are the allergens that you have. And again, on Odysseys, it says allergens, and then because they're cereals, just says cereal, barley, oats, wheat, spelt. So it's just giving you the allergens as well. It's not giving you that breakdown of what is in there. You know, it's not like this is the carob malt, this is a crystal malt, or those sort of things. It is very much more sort of we've got to tell you this stuff's in here.
Whereas Canada's the Wild West. Yeah,
I mean,
anyway.
this is literally the wild western Canada.
I do like your beer. That's a strong name as well. Thunder Meadows.
Thunder Meadows IPA. Yeah, I really want to know about this mysterious, legendary hut that's called Thunder Meadows, presumably. Because
Jabba's
I don't
cousin,
think it's
mate.
called IPA. Sorry?
Jabba's cousin.
Nice.
God, this smells lovely.
I want a beer now.
It's just like, sorry, Lucy. I mean, you've got the option. You can go and grab a beer if you want to.
Good.
I imagine your tea's probably drunk by now.
Yeah.
For listeners,
yeah, but we're teasing with
Oh,
our
God.
beers.
for listeners of this episode, go back to 301. You understand.
I'm tired and I want to sleep.
Yeah, that's fine.
There you go.
I like... How see-through is that beer?
It's not. It is opaque. But it's not like a beer that you very recently drank out of, which was sort of a solid block of colour. This is now. Oh no, I'm hovering over the turn off my camera.
It's just really hazy. It's not like a brick
Yes,
color.
yeah. It's not like a big block of solid colour. There's lots of light around the edges of this, and it's much deeper, kind of in the centre of it. But that's a lovely, lovely fruity nose. It's got a little bit of a, again, we're looking at these kind of slightly earthy, slightly fruity double IPAs, I think. It's got that little salady kind of note to it in there. It's a little bit carbonated. Oh, actually. Not like incredibly like fizzy in your face. It just feels that the flavour is being pushed a little bit by that carbonation. Like you're hit with that initial carbonation and a big flavour, and then it dips very slightly when that carbonation sort of fades. But it's nice and light. Very, very smooth. Very, very creamy. I know they were saying they used, was it Sabro, Talus in this, which does give that coconutty kind of flavour, and that's there, but it's actually dialed down really well. Like, I'm not a big coconut fan.
No.
And the sort of the Sabro use that we've been getting in beers has been good, but for me, a lot of it is just a bit too much. This has dialed that right down, and it's not that huge kind of creamy coconut flavour that we've been getting in beers. It's just a little more subdued than that. Very, very well balanced with lots of nice but very, again, subtle tropical fruits. So it's hard to pick out what those fruits are because the creaminess and the coconut kind of just overrides them slightly. Not too much, but just a little. And that little bit of that kind of grassy salady note that I was getting on the nose doesn't come through in the flavour. So this doesn't actually sit in that kind of modern dipper juice bomb sort of scale. It's kind of somewhere else almost. It's slightly removed from that. It's not edging on juice bomb with its sort of flavours, but it's not getting into this like danker, earthy, oniony kind of double IPA, which we'd been getting a lot of in 2021. It sits somewhere else. It's like a slightly bigger IPA, you know, rather than it being a dipper. It just feels like it's a bit of a bigger beer, but it's not a big beer.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the percentage was. Eight and a bit. No, 8. Spot on 8. It just doesn't feel like it. Doesn't feel like it at all. Really smooth, really easy. Yeah, that's good. That's really good. This is gonna go very, very quickly.
Nice.
Adel, the Fernie.
So
Thunder Meadows. Sorry, I
in
interrupt you, but
contrast
you've
to
got
last
it. You've got to
beer.
say it, haven't you?
Thunder Meadows. It's the Thunder Meadows IPA. I really want to know. I'm gonna have to look into this weird cabin that's called Thunder Meadows. In contrast with the last beer I had last episode, you can see right through it. You can see my hand. It's
Yeah.
hazy, but just a little bit. It's got a nice. It poured with a bit of a head that immediately diminished to a few milliliters, which doesn't even. You can see kind of on camera that like the center doesn't have head on it. Like it's really quite just clinging to the glass. It's got a little more tart, a little more pine, but does have some tropical notes as well on the nose, but like gear down set a couple of gears as far as strength. So you're getting a bit more of that tartness as the strength, and then you're like, maybe that's some sort of tropical something. There's no citrus, but it's a really nice, pleasant nose. It's just like very geared down.
Yeah.
Despite being 6.7%, you could tell that the super saturation that that I did last episode. I have to remember new format. But yeah, the super saturation which I had last episode, they talked about jamming, like really trying to be big on the nose and on those jamming those hops in. And this, on the other side, even though it's a stronger beer, is much more reserved because it's just sort of like the 3 hops that they chose are just there and they're coming through. They're not purposefully like dry hopped or anything to give it a big boisterous nose. So they mentioned oat and wheat as like what was it? No, it didn't. It was just on the thing, right? Yeah. So the oat and wheat, I guess, is also doing a bit more silky mouthfeel than I was expecting for such a, like I said, like a hazy, sort of thinner, less heady beer. It still does have a bit of a clinginess, silkiness on the mouthfeel, which I assume is those malts. But you're not getting a lot of malt on the taste in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really tasty, much more pine forward beer, and yeah, it's the pininess is really nice because it's like sort of a pine point of notes, but it isn't the main flavor, so you're not getting drenched in like resin. But underneath that is Yeah, a little bit of tropics, but overall, I think what's most interesting about this beer is just how it just has enough bitterness on the finish to be like, yes, you're having a beer, you're having IPA, and that's being supported by that resiny pininess, but it's really quite like, except on, like I said, except on the finish, which does also have a bit of that aspartame like mouthfeel. That's sort of like, oh, it's hollowing me out a bit. It's really not that bitter at all. It's shocking that this is 6.7%.
Mm.
You can kind of tell on the finish with, and the foretaste just with this a bit, the sweetness that is ebbing through, that's really well balanced with that pininess is much probably due to the alcohol, but it's again really light and it's well blended, so you could easily be like, oh yes, this is, I hate to say light beer. I don't mean light beer in the sense of North American light beers, but I just mean it's
Sure.
really like almost the only place where it has depth is like I said, that pininess and a bit of a tropical undertone. So you can just easily drink this because it's really light on the mouthfeel, and it doesn't have a long finish, so you could easily reach back. But I can tell, having just had a 6% beer and a few sips of this, I'm like, oh yes. If I pounded this, this would be a messier podcast. But I really like this. Again, I think this is my second Fernie beer in as many weeks, and I'm really impressed at how, I think last week was old format, and I picked it because it was such a well-balanced, interesting beer.
Hmm.
And there's less to show off in their balancing, because like last week they had that oaky aged smokiness that managed to be in a beer that was really interesting, but still like shored up well. It wasn't like, here's the smoky taste and here are the other tastes. They play well together. It was like, how have you melded these things? I believe was my notes on last week's beer from them. And this week it's like, this is just a well-balanced beer. You guys clearly know what you're doing to balance a beer, but you're not, there isn't a weird X factor going on. So it's, I think it could be less obvious to someone how good this is because it's just so easily drinkable.
Nice. We'll see how it develops as well as you kind of drink through. But let's talk then about acquisitions. What about video game acquisitions? Not much has happened in that space recently. You know, a couple of purchases by a couple of.
Rare recently, but
yeah.
that was
Lucy's waiting to acquire her Steam Deck. Isn't that what we're talking about?
Yeah. Lucy's waiting to acquire a Steam Deck, the Playdate, well, the handheld. You must have hundreds of handheld devices on the way.
I think yes, I did pre-order that. I don't even know what it's called.
The other one.
Pocket.
Oh, the game, the Game Boy kind of, yeah.
It's like, oh, this will not come till 2023 at the earliest. It's like, okay, well, I'll think about if I really want this for the next year. Fair enough.
Nice. Local acquisitions being made all the time by us here at TACTAP. But on a wider industry scale, yes, we've seen some buying recently, and we're kind of launching with I suppose for listeners who might not know, they probably already know, but like it was weird last year when Microsoft brought Bethesda, right, and everyone's like, wow, this is like the biggest news ever, and Microsoft's like, hold my fucking beer.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna,
because Bethesda was what, $6 billion?
7.5.
Yeah, 7 something. Yeah. It's change, right? It's just change when we're talking about, you know.
Yeah, they found it at the back of their sofa. Bill Gates was like, you need 20. Just pulled out.
Yeah,
$6 billion or $7 billion.
So Microsoft last week before, acquired ABK, and that's not a Burger King. It's Activision-Blizzard-King.
The King is very important, right?
Yeah. I mean, so for those of you who don't know, Activision is obviously mostly known for Call of Duty nonsense, Blizzard for World of Warcraft nonsense, and King for mobile gaming cash money. Name a mobile gaming game, like a mobile game that has made money in waves, and King probably either made it or acquired it in the past.
They're like Clash of Clans. They're that kind of,
Yeah.
or is that Zynga? No, that's King, isn't it?
That's King, I think.
Yeah. King-a-ling. Who knows?
But
Who fucking
of
knows
course,
what it
we've
was?
previously mentioned ABK mostly on the AB side because of how awful they are and have continued to be to their employees, to the point of the state of California really taking them to task. I mean,
Yes.
literally lawsuits, and also like revolts coming out of the waves of lawsuits.
Mm.
Which, because we live in late stage capitalism, means their stock price tanked, which means you could buy them for cheap if you thought that the stock price was low enough that you could deal with the problems of the ongoing lawsuits.
Yeah. What was the buyout, like 69 billion? 69 billion. Fucking like, what an insane amount of money.
And so obviously it hasn't happened yet. This was the announcement.
Yes,
but
true.
They're
Yes.
basically on a 68.7 billion all cash deal, which means Microsoft just has the money
That's nuts.
in their reserves to buy ABK for $95 a share.
There are 4 trillion.
Yes, yeah. So again, the article that I've posted up chatting about PlayStation and potential future acquisitions, when I was looking at the values of companies, Microsoft was at something like 3.9 trillion. That's not Xbox, because Xbox is a department of Microsoft, but the money in Microsoft is about $3.9 trillion.
Like incomprehensible. You
But-
can't perceive.
No.
It's like how when I talk about Canada, it's like, oh yeah, I have to travel to like another country to get to somewhere else in Canada, and I just can't. I can't wrap my mind about it because it's like, what do you mean?
It's like, oh yeah, I just drove to like Scotland and back. Oh, what?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like,
It's like,
when I went to my sister's in Saskatoon and drove for 8 hours straight on a straight highway, like literally 8 hours straight, and went one province over.
Yeah, I can't comprehend it the same way I can't comprehend 4 trillion.
So
Absolutely.
what I want to be clear about on why this deal was possible is the fact that the stock was around $80 in October, and then by sort of mid-December was down to 57 as a low.
Okay.
And something happened in the middle of January where it was at 65 and then it jumped to 82. And obviously that's the day the announcement was made, but like 95 is still above what it was trading 4 months, right? So this isn't like, this is a sweetheart deal for Activision. It's not like like the reason why it was a yes was because it was before things really got bad. You were worth less than this. So, because a lot of people, I think the discourse has talked about how Microsoft is poaching or like getting them while they're low, and obviously, you offer more than it's currently worth, otherwise they won't accept it. So
Absolutely.
that's kind of the case. But like, even when the lawsuits weren't as bad, it was still not as much. So it's definitely not like Microsoft poaching in a strong sense.
Absolutely. And they're probably, you know, when their stock was low, they were probably out there. And there's kind of like rumor going around that actually it's Blizzard that have been out kind of touting themselves and seeing if anyone was up for purchasing them. And
Yeah.
you'll more likely find that, you know, they were actually worth like 50 billion or 55 billion or something like that. And then, you know, Microsoft came in and said, well, actually, if we do this, and our analyst is saying that maybe the stock will jump, so actually this is what we're going to give to you. And
also, Phil Spencer just sneezed and another 20 bill came out of his nose or something like that. So yeah,
they're like,
it's
oh,
like,
yeah.
what's an extra 19 billion?
Completely,
Right?
yeah. So like, I'd love to get into the actual, like, drill down at some point into understanding the numbers. But we like, apart from, as you've just done, sort of, Adel, looking at the historic sort of like stock prices and things, I can't imagine they'll ever release like big old breakdowns of what they've actually kind of valued. You know, come along and gone like, you know, this studio that you have makes this amount of money over X amount of years, so we value that at this, and we value that at this, and we value, these are all of your assets, and this is how we kind of work it out. Versus then, you know, Sony, who have picked up Bungie for like 4 point something, 3.6 billion, a billion still, billion.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But again, Bungie's got like one game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. So that's the thing about, like, if we rewind to the Microsoft deal, like, one of the things Phil Spencer said was, it's amazing how many, like, what they have in their backlog. And he sort of hinted that he wanted to explore that, which makes tons of sense, because in the modern world, IP is king, right? That's what we were sort of alluded to last episode when we sort of talked about Lego move games and stuff. Like the money is in owning the property, right?
Yep.
And like King has all these properties that if you don't mobile game, you don't hear about. Blizzard has all these properties that if you game, you, except for the fact that Diablo 2, 3 kind of tanked a bit or whatever, and like Blizzard's been kind of not hitting home runs lately, they still have very well-known, respected, wanted games. And then Activision has a bunch under its umbrella because they've been doing what Microsoft and Sony have been doing, which is acquiring things. So it's not just Call of Duty, it's like all these other franchises that unfortunately Activision's, because they've focused on microtransactions and surefire things and churning things out, is kind of not really done anything with the stuff. Like, they've just repurposed studios they've bought into make more Warzone levels. And
which
like,
is a weird thing, because it's not a weird thing, because it's like, if this doesn't make a gazillion dollars like Call of Duty, we don't want to know. But like their recent outputs of, like, you know, the Crash Bandicoot 4 and, you know, Tony Hawk remaster, they were good and like critically acclaimed. Maybe they didn't sell 10 million copies each, but obviously you wouldn't expect it to. But it's just crazy how it's like you have that tech, and you just roll those very talented teams into a Call of Duty support studio where they're just making gun skins.
Yeah, and it's weird, right, that we sit in an area where obviously everything is measured in some kind of way, whether they have made money on sort of their development costs versus the kind of the units sold and things like that. But actually, when we look at kind of the amount of people with, you know, consoles and stuff, and it's like, what, 115 million PlayStation 4s were sold, which, you know, you can't always say that's not 115 million people with PlayStation 4s, right? Some people would have brought the Pro, they'd have upgraded from the original one. Some people would have broke.
Some people were mining Bitcoin with
exactly. Some people brought 1,000 of them to be able to do that. So those numbers aren't kind of like accurate in that sort of sense. So then looking at something and saying like it sold 10 million copies, it's a success because it's hit like 8% of the console market versus a game selling like 3 million. That 3 million may still be a very big success for that studio, because if they're making an incredibly like niche title, then that will absolutely be perfect.
These things were profitable; they just weren't profitable by Activision-Blizzard.
Yes,
ridiculous
exactly. Yes.
Because they're capitalist hoarders, and it's just sick.
Yeah, it's also like units doesn't mean anything. It matters how much you make per unit, which
Yeah.
is both sides of things. Which is when you enter and say this sold 10 million copies, this sold 3 million copies. It's quite possible the 3 million copies made the company more money. So like these metrics are bad.
Yeah.
But also on the flip side, what Activision Blizzard under Bobby Kotick has been looking for the longest time is how much money per unit can I make?
Yes.
That was the metric that mattered, which is why they acquired things, found out those things didn't make nearly as much money as, say, Call of Duty with loot boxes. And so, can we shove loot boxes in it to make up that difference? No, then those teams go to somewhere else that already has loot boxes. I'm using loot boxes kind of ironically, but not really, because that is a thing that Activision Blizzard is really
absolutely.
zeroed in on. But also, I'm using it as a sort of placeholder for like extra money maker on top of original purchase price.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what they're all looking at NFTs to hopefully do now, right? It's the same idea. It's like, can I get more money out of the same amount of work?
Yeah.
Completely, and part of that as well feeds into kind of like what Sony's new strategy, or not new strategy, but what Sony's strategy over the last year has kind of been. So there's a graphic, I can't remember whose Twitter feed I saw. It might be Daniel Ahmed, who is like an industry analyst and stuff. Got a great Twitter account if you want to get into the sort of the ins and outs of kind of the industry. But I think he's like at Zerg H or something like that, right? But there was a graphic going around that basically said that from Sony, and this was like an internal document, but like they made tons of in-game purchases from MLB The Show. It was like the top game on PSN, which made the most kind of like in-game money, right? They've now put that out to Xbox, which supposedly was an MLB thing because they don't own the franchise. It's not published necessarily by them, and MLB wanted it to get into more hands. And the next game, which is coming out, is going to be on the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
So suddenly, but PlayStation, if that is making a lot of money for them through in-game purchases, now has all of those other people who are playing it on these consoles, which it's now available for, which they'll be getting a cut of. You know, the console will take whatever they skim off the top, and the rest of it will be going to Sony. So suddenly, it makes sense for Sony to throw out a game which has in-game purchases, which historically has been making lots of money through that type of system for them, to go on to other kind of consoles. It is, for these companies, just about money. That is it.
Yeah, which actually isn't a bad thing from the perspective of the console wars, because that artificial monopoly was bad for consumers.
Sure.
And it was viewed as like, I'm putting the money down, so I need to recoup all the it'll move units. But now that like consoles aren't not where they're making their money, we're seeing more crossplay, we're seeing more willingness to do things, because actually they've fucked us all, and playing the game is going to cost money. So it doesn't matter, like the guys at Sony don't care if you play their Sony game on an Xbox, so long as you pay your microtransactions to Sony.
Yep.
I mean, consoles have always been, you know, the loss leaders, and they don't make money on them. They just want people in their ecosystem.
Yep.
And like Sony have nowhere near the attachment rate as like Nintendo.
No.
First party thing. So it's like, yeah, we put 500 million into Uncharted and God of War. 5 million players picked it up. 10 million players picked it up. And it's like,
those games broke even.
Yeah. It's like, okay. Probably broke even.
I mean, they didn't break even.
Right,
they just broke even based on the profit margin being asked.
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
Let's be clear that they're making billions of dollars.
Yes.
They're just not making tens or hundreds of billions of dollars.
Factoring marketing on top of that, and development costs, and keeping those studios running, and burn rate and everything. It's just like, this is, I mean, it worked for them last generation, but you could definitely see like the door closing on that kind of strategy. Because I mean, look at Microsoft. None of their first party games sold maybe even 2 million copies.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, let's switch to a services kind of deal and put everything on PC. And
Yeah,
it's
like very cleverly it shifted
yeah,
what their focus was. Yeah.
I mean, just looking at what Microsoft have done, when you take it as a whole, like looking how it's been going, like when they went from okay, Phil's now in charge, and probably one of the first things he did was backward compatibility, probably.
Yeah.
But you just take it as that when back in 2015 or whatever. But when you like start following the trail and the seeds, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it's no wonder that Microsoft is a $4 trillion company, because they know what they're doing, and they know they had a strategy in place, and man, has it worked. And and Sony are doing the exact same thing, like their live service plan. I'm sure that will come to fruition, but it's like it's just interesting taken as a whole these last 5 years or something. Just
I think the big benefit of Microsoft is that they aren't just a gaming company. Sony is an intellectual property company that does games.
Yeah.
They also do hardware, right? Hardware is very static. But like, sorry?
Their TVs are crap.
Their cameras are very good.
Their image sensors as well. Their image sensors were like, I can't remember if it was like 2019 or 2020, but the two most profitable departments of Sony were PlayStation and their image sensor department.
Nice. Yeah, their Walkman are alright as well.
Like, sure, okay.
The thing about Microsoft is they've been in software forever, right? Their other branches are software, and so if you look at what they're doing in the other side, I think you can see that like where Game Pass came from, for example. So since Windows 10 came out, they've basically, it's very hard to need to pay for their operating system.
Yes.
Which used to be their bread and butter, right? It's their like, it's the software equivalent to a console because it's the ecosystem, it's what you need, etc. They gave away Windows 10 upgrades, they're giving away Windows 11 upgrades. You need some form of a license, but they don't really follow up when you buy gray market licenses from across the world, to the point where companies have paid pennies, and that should be where they would traditionally they'd be like, nah, not you. Like, you need your site, like you need to pay attention. But then you look at Office, and it's so hard to find how on the Microsoft Store how to buy a permanent license to Office, because software as a service is just what Office is. Office is Office 365. You pay every year. And that's what Game Pass is. Except Game Pass is way better because Office stays as fucking PowerPoint, Excel, and Word, and some other nonsense, I'm sure. But like, you don't. There's cosmetic differences, and actually, they have actually fought against Grammarly and stuff in Office or in Word, I know, and now the grammar correcting in Word is like 1,000,000 times better than it was whenever the last time I used fucking Word, which was before 2010. So, grain of salt. But like, that's what like. While Game Pass is, because it's entertainment based, you have to have the churn of games. Like, Control is just leaving Game Pass this next month, and it makes sense because like it was in the zeitgeist, past its like prime selling point, and it got me to pay attention to Game Pass. But that was a year ago, so like they've got the right timelines to like have things sit. But software as a service is what they are selling, and they know how to because they can get advice from other people, right? In Microsoft. While Sony is like, well, PlayStation's like our top dog moneymaker, and if it starts to flag, what are we gonna do? Like, how did you sell things to Netflix, movie guys?
I'm glad they're doing this now. I'm glad they've realized, because you're thinking like Sony the last couple of years have just been, looked quite stuffy and stuck in their ways at a certain point, and it's just like
stagnant.
Okay, they have realized they need to pivot now.
Absolutely.
Start it now before that, because like you know, Microsoft are not competing with Sony at this point. They have all the money in the world. They could buy Sony with,
Yeah.
you know, what you know, Satya Nadella pooped out this morning. So it's just like, you know, it's just, yeah. I'm happy about these acquisitions, to be honest. Like, sat on it for a bit, and it's like, look at all this IP, look at all these talented developers, you know, get them to make something else, get them to be under a new stewardship and new umbrella that's
I think
probably
that's
not as abusive and harmful.
So
that's kind of
most
what
importantly.
I was going to say, I think that's good in certain respects, right? So for Microsoft and for Sony, yes, that kind of makes sense. And this is a part of what I touched on kind of on in my article, is that there's that opportunity to help maybe flagging, maybe not so well performing developers, maybe pivot, you know, take the talent that they've got and get them to apply it elsewhere with a little bit of funding and a little bit of backing to be able to kind of do that. But on the opposite side, we then saw, like, towards the second half of last year, EA bought Codemasters and now just own like 95% of racing games. You want to play a racing game, you're giving EA some money.
Oh, and also, they're historically very bad at keeping good racing games good.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
Yeah, so the thing is, what I wanted to say was, like, it's very easy, I think, to say, because Activision Blizzard was squandering a lot of IP, they're bad to their employees. It's very easy to be like, Microsoft doesn't have the reputation of crunch as bad. Definitely doesn't have that sexual harassment culture, frat bro boy stuff. Probably because at the heart of Microsoft, it's a stuffed shirt, white collar.
Oh, they're all fucking nerds, right? They've got no fucking game at all. They're just like, nah, I just.
Oh no, but
I'm
that's
just,
the problem.
I'm working. I'm working. I'm not even looking over there. I'm not even looking.
Yeah.
There's no sexual harassment because I will not avert my eyes.
I'm too busy looking at Excel. This is what turns me on.
Yeah. And I don't want to say that it doesn't happen in that company.
No,
I just mean
sure.
that the reports of the culture aren't there.
Yep.
And so it makes it very easy to be like, good, better stewardship for both me as a fan of games and me as a fan of people being treated right.
Yep.
But it's still not good because it's more monopoly stuff, right?
But
like
the thing is that there'll be so many other. I mean, the video game industry has just grown and grown exponentially. There'll be studios taking the space of, maybe not as big as Activision, but there'll be people making new studios. There'll be other indie studios getting bigger. But
this represents a larger chunk of people under a singular umbrella, which usually isn't good for competition, etc.
It's like,
but I think this is why it's easy to swallow,
think the
right?
positives probably outweigh it in the terms of like Activision Blizzard.
Yeah, this is why I want to say this.
Like, for those people.
And I think it is a big chunk of the industry which is going into one place.
Just Call of Duty, man.
But you look at like Embracer Group, who are the biggest gaming company in the whole world, right? They own like
Tencent.
No, So Tencent are an interesting one, right? Because they buy lots of shares
and stakes in
all over the place, but they don't actually like own anything.
The best thing to do, isn't it? Spread your
completely.
Well, also then you don't have to fucking direct them because you don't own them.
Yes, completely, exactly. But Embracer Group own like 30% of the games industry at this point.
Really?
Like, they're fucking massive. They're huge. And again, they just buy and they buy.
And everything THQ owned, and which is basically 30% of the industry.
Yeah, and they brought THQ, they own Koch Media, they own, so it's not even just the gaming companies, they're then into like PR companies and all of this sort of stuff as well. So they have ownership over some of that stuff. And then like EA, I think, are like second biggest in terms of like ownership of the amount of like game companies. I think it's EA next, and then I think it's now Microsoft.
Yeah.
which it was PlayStation and it was Sony, and then I think Microsoft have overtaken them with the Activision Blizzard and Bethesda ZeniMax deals. Because again, ZeniMax, that's a lot of people as well.
Yeah.
Yes, it
imagine
might
they
not be
paid
quite
half-
as big, but
They
it's
paid half the amount of ZeniMax for Bungie.
but that's
Yeah.
and
absurd.
it's weird. It's weird that the Bungie one, the value of the Bungie one, seems very, very odd to me, especially when you're looking at and again, go and read my article. Capcom are like 3.5 billion, Square Enix are like 4.5 billion.
If anyone was ready to be taken over by Sony, it's Squeenix, isn't it? Like,
I don't see the point in that. It's
No.
like they get all their exclusive deals anyway. They probably just have a coffee and just say, yeah,
That's
we'll make
true.
it exclusive.
Yeah.
Probably don't pay a cent, so it's like
So yeah, go and read my article. But I think Capcom. I think it's Capcom.
I think it's IO. I think Sony are buying IO.
Ooh. Actually, to be fair, I think it's Ilphonic, even though that would be a bad purchase. Who made
Who are
Predator
they?
Hunting Grounds, which was very, very poorly received.
Have
But
they made anything else?
read my article, I'll explain it. Yeah, they did. They made Friday the 13th,
oh yeah.
game. and they've just released an early access
That
game
exists.
last year as well. But
Can
I
I-
explained them.
Buy me. I'm
Can
gonna
I
make a
just-
I mean,
video.
they could buy me if they like. I'd take fucking 50 quid. That's fine. I don't mind.
I just wanted to add the third acquisition of the past couple weeks.
Wordle.
Yeah, New York Times bought Wordle for low 7 figures.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, more. I mean, good on Wardle, John
Yeah,
Wardle, to get his
absolutely.
payday. But that to me is a much more clear-cut example of why acquisitions are usually bad. Because in one of the articles on the New York Times, they said it will remain it'll be free to play initially, and you're like, yeah, of course, initially. Fuck you, initially. But even having an ad, like, we talked about Wordle last week, I think.
Yeah.
And we talked about how, like, it's once a day, and the reason why everyone gravitated to it is because it's just a simple page this dude made for his wife, and like, you do it once a day. It's a really smart sharing thing, and even that Wordle didn't even come up with. Like, one of his, I think it was Australian or maybe New Zealand users came up with a way of sharing the Wordles with the emojis with the squares, so you didn't like give away any hints. Well, some meta hints. And that's one of the reasons why it started being like catnip to people on the internet, was because you had to figure it out, and then you were sharing, and then you could decode it, and like all that. Which I'm fine with him getting a payday, even if he didn't come up with all the information. I just hate the idea of the New York Times buying it because it's just so obviously capitalism.
The thing is that I don't think anyone. I think if we fast forward a year from now, 2023, February 2023, none of us would be talking about Wordle. We'll be like, oh yeah.
Oh,
You know?
so this is the reason why I wanted to bring it up, was because it's obviously capitalism doing stupid capitalism shit, but it won't matter because, like, I honestly don't play Wordle every day anymore anyway. I'm already kind of half bounced. This was a bad thing for New York Times, although they probably
absolutely.
That's the thing. I think them buying it though, and making it like maybe not a commercial product or whatever, I think that will mean that it'll stick around longer than if Wordle was just free on a website.
Again,
I think-
potentially talking about things like subscription services and stuff, if that's folded into your New York Times subscription, like when you're playing your sort of like you're doing the word cross, and that's part of it as well. That's thrown in as well.
I think that's what
that will
keeps
get
it
people
alive,
playing
you know?
because they will want to get more value out of their subscription. But then again, does the subscription lift slightly because they have to recover the 10, 11 million, 12 million, whatever, those low 7 figures that they've had to kind of pay? They've got to get that back somehow. So putting Wordle in might just lift your subscriptions very slightly. And yes, it might get people to, it takes it out of the zeitgeist, sure, but and naturally Wordle would have come out of the zeitgeist as well, but it keeps people playing absolutely maybe longer than they would have, or keeps a good portion of people playing longer than they potentially would have.
As a creator, I'd imagine that, whether it's behind a paywall or not, whether it's free or whatever, that it'd be nice to see that something you've created, like, doesn't just fall away like most trends now, and it is like, something that's not eternal, but something that's,
I mean, some people
that-
would. If
maybe,
someone decided to give me 10 million quid for, half a day's work, I wouldn't give a fuck what happens.
I mean,
just fucking
yeah,
do it. Like,
I wanted to mention.
I'm just saying, like,
bye.
the
See
way you
ya.
sound, what Mr. Wardle wrote, it sounds like he genuinely cares about his creation.
Yeah.
That's why he probably held out on not taking money straight away. And it's like, and he says that he understands, like, the reason why him and his wife like word games is because they play, a lot of the stuff on New York Times. So maybe you would want to see your creation immortalized like that.
Yeah.
Maybe, perhaps.
I completely am fine with him making the choice. I just see it as it's like a speculation in a very capitalist way of this will in the long run make us money.
Yes.
Here's 7 figures, in a way that, like, up until that point, with not even a banner ad on the site, it was just very obviously a thing. I just find that interesting to contrast with the very calculated Activision Blizzard will take a $95 per stock buyout because its 5-year high was 103, I think. So, like, it's never really been higher than that. It's not like they will accept this because, and also, like, Bobby's gonna get a golden parachute out of this, like, almost guaranteed. As soon as they acquire him, he's out. But the deal will be like, get me fuck off rich, right? Like, there's all kinds of interesting things. So obviously we're running out of time for the episode, but I just wanted to mention it as sort of a very discrete notion of, yes, they do word games, but they're like, this is a novel word game, despite people who criticize it being a ripoff of Mastermind, right? That New York Times didn't need to give a shit about, but they did, and that's interesting. And I think you're right, Lucy. The vast majority of people who play Wordle will not be, like, by the time it becomes behind a paywall, won't care.
Yeah. And Mr. Wardle can continue. Imagine going on the New York Times that he probably subscribes to and just seeing his game there. It's like, and he got paid for it, and he's living on the ranch somewhere. And it's like, yeah, cool. I mean, I'm just glad he got paid. As you say, it's very cynical and bad, like, why they bought it, but it's just like...
from his perspective, makes total sense.
Yeah, and I've realised when they've said low 7 figures, and I'm there going, oh yeah, like 10, 11 million. That's 8 figures. So it's like, it's like maybe 2-3 million, something like that. Perhaps.
$1 million. And
Oh, absolutely. Yes, completely. You're kind of done. I think it's kind of like a final point from me on acquisitions and potentially the idea of, like, consolidation. Is lots of people are talking about, the idea that it will get to that stage, but this is something that's happening at every level, right? So we've got Embracer Group buying things, we've got Tencent putting their fingers in, we've got Sony and Microsoft looking at picking up stuff, but you've also got, like, Sumo Digital, who are looking and picking up very specific studios as well. Auroch Digital. We've had our friends on from Auroch Digital a few months ago. Auroch Digital picked up and now purchased by Sumo, who are kind of like a growing company. It's not just happening up here. It's something that happens across the board everywhere. But for every company that's picked up, like, a new indie studio is suddenly formed. The amount of stories we hear about X-industry, these developers or this developers are then hooking up with developers. Yes, there was a new one today that was announced. So, like, it's one where it's this, like, continuous cycle, and we're at a weird point where, like, there's been, like, dropouts in the gaming industry. Where like THQ went bust and all of these sort of things, through various financial poor decisions and stuff like this. And there was in the 80s where, like, certain games fucked things up for consoles and stuff like that. But gaming is so fucking big now.
Yeah. It's the biggest industry, basically, like in entertainment.
There doesn't seem to be a way that like the industry at large could fail.
No.
So it's kind of one where we're not going back into that cyclical kind of, oh, it happened in the 80s, it happened in the 90s, it happened in the kind of like 2010s. But again, well, you know, world recession around about that time as well. And so all of these kind of companies in 2012, 2013 started to go bust when people were really kind of pinching pennies and stuff around then. That suddenly we're not at that point. And yes, we you know, recessions are a cyclical kind of thing, and we may get one in a couple of years' time. We're sort of due for one to come up in maybe 2024-ish, but entertainment seems to be something that people are giving more of their money away to. Gaming is a big portion of entertainment these days, and even if it's someone going, oh, you know, I like Just Dance, I've brought the game and I'll only spend me 40 quid on the you know, Just Dance Unlimited, that's
someone to spend.
that is me. Luckily, I don't only just have 40. Incredibly privileged and very, very lucky to not only just have 40 quid, but to be able to go like, let's, you know, buy Just Dance Unlimited for them for the year. But that will be someone's kind of like, you know, purchase, rather than them going, say, to the cinema or having both Disney Plus and Netflix and Amazon Prime. You know, that gaming is much more of a mind space these days, that it isn't going to get to a point where everything is 3 companies and is consolidated so much that if one company fails, everything else is fucked. Like, that's not going to happen.
I mean, you mentioned the Aura Digital Sumo thing. One thing that did happen last month was that the UK High Court approved the $1.27 billion deal of Tencent acquiring Sumo.
Oh, shit. I didn't even fucking know that.
Yeah, I know. I realized you probably didn't. So, like, our friends down the road, owned by the Chinese.
Wow.
But, like, this is what you mean about it happening at all levels, is because, like, last year, Tencent tried to acquire Sumo, and while that was being figured out, Sumo kept doing their own thing, which was acquiring things like Orog. Right, and like Chinese Room is owned by Sumo as well. We like their games, and it's like, it is at every level, which is why places like Activision Blizzard, even though we know them for like Warcraft and Call of Duty, had all this backlog of games that Microsoft was like, oh wait, we could do things with these things, even if they chose not to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can play Vampire Survivors. And,
I mean, at the end of the day,
as Lucy,
forever independent.
As Lucy put it, like, there's always going to be indie devs, and to be honest, like, Vampire Survivors reminds me of the discourse around it. Reminds me a lot about Loop Hero last year.
Yeah.
Of like semi-idle game that like is doing really interesting things mechanically with a nostalgic retro feel. And you'll never get that out of your ABKs and your Microsofts because that's too much innovation. But also,
they might feel bad about just ripping off Castlevania.
Yeah, but also that's fine, right? Because if it's good, that expertise will roll up, and we'll get interesting people working on hopefully not destagnifying the top end of games. Because the whole point of buying Company X, who's really revolutionary, and putting them on your boring series is to make your boring series not boring. And that's just the way capitalism is built. And like, where I struggle is when it's a big company buying a big company, because then you're not really doing that creative churn.
Sure.
You're just doing the money churn.
Yep.
And that's only going to be bad for the consumer, or it's going to be neutral. But like, it's not.
Yeah. But even again, at that level, Loop Hero, published by Devolver, a publicly traded company now. So it's you know, potentially, but it's kind of, even then, it's not that, say, the developer is being funded by and is putting all of their profit towards another company. It might just be that they then have to lean into another company, which, you know, this is the sort of the relationship that there is between developers and publishers kind of within games, that these acquisitions kind of muddy slightly, you know, especially the idea that then Bungie is going to be self-publishing still and multi-platform still, but it's essentially just going to be funded by Sony. They're kind of going to just do their own thing. They're just going to be funded by Sony, and obviously all of the profit that they make will be going to Sony, because Sony are in the process of buying out all of the shares that all the all of the Bungie employees currently have, right? That's part of the idea that Bungie is kind of owned in part by its employees, and Sony are basically going to be buying them all out. Great for the employees in some senses, because they get a nice windfall of cash, and they then have a stable job working on whatever the fuck they want, because they're being funded by a mega corporation. Hooray! And then in the other sense, boo. I think our conversation, it's odd, isn't it, to kind of fall somewhere in the middle, to kind of be okay with some of this, but also to sort of just question how the world works, and that we have absolutely zero impact on how the world works at large.
I think the key here is that normally these acquisitions are always going to be bad for the consumer, because it's rolling things up and having less diversity, and like the whole point of the free market is the competitors have to compete.
Yep.
So they'll not be able to extract all the surplus for themselves, and so like your Call of Duty and your Halos are now under the same umbrella, so they can just charge more in the ethereal notion of charge because it's the same company. Like, that's the worry. But actually, we forget that the company is full of human beings normally, and this is a very good moment to remember that. And actually, these human beings are probably going to do better under Microsoft stewardship. And also, because of Activision's plans, like, the IP, which like most gamers only care about IP and not the workers, no matter what they say, the IP is probably going to get freed. So like, there is that worry about a company controlling things in this state. I don't think it's that big of a deal. With Wordle, like Lucy said, it'll be around now, perhaps on paper form, right? Or something. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know how you get a paper form. I just mean, like, it's now guaranteed some longevity, because some guy some guy in the New York Times has to justify that $1 to $3 million. So it's going to show up in their subscription, and it, the same way that no one talks about Animal Crossing anymore, like Wordle was probably destined for that at some point, just because. And so now it might be somewhere. The one that I'm most cynical about is the PlayStation Bungie one, for the exact reasons that none of the above applies.
Yep. And again, we talk about kind of the potential for Microsoft to, treat people better and these kinds of things. And there's a big push in some spaces in Activision Blizzard, like Raven Software, to unionize and things like that. And if anyone wants to get kind of like deeper into this, Waypoint Radio have done a really good episode on this, and talking about the acquisition and the FTC, and getting into being an American podcast, really getting into the sort of the weeds on this kind of thing. But there is also that fear that suddenly these good steps, that people are taking to do things like unionization and stuff, might kind of grind to a halt, because then there's the perception that it's like, hooray, company X has taken us over and it will be better for us, so let's stop the progress that we are kind of currently making. But perhaps unionization and things like that is another topic for another day. Let's finish then our acquisition conversation there, and round out episode 302 by talking about our beers and if we've enjoyed them. I kicked us off with the Overtone, Out of the Wild. This is lovely. Overtone just can like do no wrong, right? It's just a very, again, another easy double IPA. 8%. It didn't quite mellow as much as previous beers. I'm leaning back into previous formats, and I don't do that. This beer's great, right? It mellows very nicely, but quite slowly, and it retains its kind of smoothness throughout. It's one perhaps that is a little bit bigger. So you get to the end of it and you feel satisfied. Like, right, this is great. I've had this beer. I've really enjoyed it. I don't need any more. I'm done. I can finish on this beer for the evening, whether that's the start of the day, whether that the start of the kind of drinking day in the afternoon, or late in the evening. You can just have this one beer and it will absolutely satisfy you, because it's just so smooth and very, very easy. So I've really enjoyed the Overtone Out of the Wild, which isn't unusual for Overtone. They make excellent, well-balanced beers. Adel, the Fernie, Thunder Meadows
IPA. Yeah, Thunder Meadows IPA. I like it. Not to slip into previous formats, I like it. It's a nice, good. It's a 6.7% that tastes like a 5.2 in a good way. I like that it's kind of piney and less bitter. It makes it for like a, let's call it a sloppy sessionable beer. I could easily have multiple of these in a row. I probably shouldn't because it's 6.7%. I'm still impressed with what Fernie's done. I had another one of their beers last week and really liked it. I think I was expecting more, maybe just because last week kind of blew me away in a way. Like I said, it was like barrel aged, but in a way I've never had sort of a barrel aged beer be it. And so I was hoping this is like really well crafted. But again, it's just it's an IPA, and there's only so much you can do with the bare bones. I don't think it's a knock on them that it didn't blow me away as much as last week did, because there was less to surprise me about, I guess. I wish I guess my one critique is I wish it was some of the other flavors. Like, it's got 3 hops going, right? It's got the Simcoe, the Equinox, the Idaho 7, and they're well blended, but nothing really like takes the stage. It's I guess I would like maybe just like that reservedness, like it's a little pine forward and it's not that hot bitter. Maybe that's what I'm wishing was a little different, just that it had something in the taste curve to just be like, this is your moment. While this is, but the reason why I say it's like a sloppy sessionable is because there isn't that moment, so you can kind of just casually sip it and you'd be like, yeah, I'll have another of these. It's not doing anything wrong. It's great and it tastes good. And I'm not saying it's boring. It just doesn't have sort of a peak on the taste curve.
Yep.
But at 6.7%, I can't just sip this all night without repercussions. So I wouldn't mind if it had some sort of something a little extra, just to make the one or two I have a little more interesting, I guess. But yeah, that might just be me at the end of the night being like, I don't want to slam this back. Please stop me, beer. Oh, you aren't? Okay, well.
Goodbye. It's gone. Drink very quickly.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Good. That's us then for this episode. If you'd like to get hold of us and tell us what you think about all of these acquisitions and the future of kind of the gaming market and what people are kind of doing, you can do that in lots of different ways. We are at Tanked Up Cast on all of the socials. Come and join us in the Discord as well and chat to us. A link will be on outoflives.net under the podcast post, as well as on our YouTube channel, Out of Lives Network. You should join us over on Twitch every week to hear kind of a double whammy of episodes, and we are Out of Lives Network over on Twitch. If you want to chat to me or play a game, suggest. I've got very little time to play games. I'm at Nova_47. Lucy, if people want to, just come and chat to you about Vampire Survivors or similar kind of games, how do they do that?
Yeah, tell me some good bullet hell games. At Juicy Loose 9, literally everywhere.
Perfect. And Adel, if people want to talk to you about acquisitions, big money buyouts, or their take on Fernie and Canadian beers that they've had, how do they do that?
You can reach me at the Omniarch on all of the things, not including Twitch. That's got an underscore under it. Lost my tagline. I'm at the Omniarch. Find me on Instagram and all those things.
Perfect.
Chat at me.
Brilliant.
And yeah. Also, email us. We haven't had a lot of interaction from our listening public, but I see the stats. I know you're there. Especially tell us what you think of the new format. That'd be really helpful.
It would be really helpful. And obviously going to your podcast service of choice and rating and reviewing us would be incredibly helpful as well. Remember, you're now kind of getting a double dose of Tanked Up each week. And you can do that on your podcast service, on outoflives.net, and on YouTube. But for this week, that's been the beers, it's been the games, it's been the topics that we have delved right into. We've been Tanked Up. We'll see you soon. Bye.
So tired, I feel drunk.
I'm so drunk, I feel tired.
Bye.
Ciao.
www.outoflives.net